Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings. These are as follows. Please only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the Chairman know that you wish to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce speakers in the order that the request to speak is made, unless there is a point of order to which we will give way. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting. Members are asked to mute your microphones when not speaking and to consider turning off your video to reduce any interference on the audio feed. Please bear in mind that there may be a lag between speaking and other attendees hearing you, so please bear this in mind. Presentation images, video footage relevant for tonight's evening meeting would have been made available to you in advance and will be visible on the screen this evening. Please indicate via the chat function if there's any problem with the presentations this evening. When referring to a report, please quote page and paragraph number. There is no private business for tonight's meeting. However, please can I remind members that when dealing with private session business, it is your responsibility to ensure that your venue and connection is private. If you lose connectivity at any point and are unable to rejoin the meeting immediately, please call the meeting facilitator. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the access to information regimes of FOI/EIR and also data protection, rules of defamation and the Council's Code of Conduct. To assist with managing this meeting, in the chat functions, the agenda items will be placed as markers for tonight's business. We have a minute taker this evening, which is Alison Webb, who will also be reading the public question time statements, meeting facilitator. I can confirm that the members of the Planning Committee are Councillor Mrs Scattergood, the Chairman, Councillor James Abbott, Councillor Kevin Bowers, Councillor Tom Cunningham, Councillor Patrick Horner, Councillor Hilton Johnson, Councillor David Mann, Councillor Andy Mundy, Councillor Ona Parker, who's given apologies for this evening, Councillor Frankie Ritchie, Councillor Mrs Gabrielle Spray, Councillor Nick Unsworth, who's given apologies for late attendance, and Councillor Wrench, who's also given apologies for this attendance. We've also got planning officers in attendance this evening. We have Chris Padgey, Development Manager, Neil Jones, Principal Planner, and Catherine Ullman, Principal Planner. I will now hand over to the Chairman, Mrs Wendy Scattergood. I'd like to apologise for the short delay that we had before commencing this meeting. The meeting should have started at 7:15, but however, due to a technical difficulty with our YouTube broadcast, this meeting was adjourned until now. So thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, members, for your patience and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our planning meeting, and I especially welcome those people watching on YouTube. I'm sorry we're a little late, but better late than never. Members, I obviously can't see all of you, so please let me know using the chat function if there are any issues with your internet connection, and silence will be taken as assent during this meeting. I shall now move on to the business of the meeting, and I'll start with item 1. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Mrs Parker, Councillor Wrench and Councillor Unsworth, who will be late. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the Code of Conduct for members? Councillor Mrs Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For transparency, I will declare an NPI in item G 2000550 The Kennels, Earls Colne. I called this in at the request of the applicant. I have spoken to the applicant several times over the last few months to give advice on process, who to speak to and so on, but that is all. So I will remain and vote, and I will be speaking on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Spray. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, item 5E to the car park application at Rivenhall. Officer advises that being a member of and being in attendance at a meeting of a parish council where an item is discussed, and then that parish council makes representations, is sufficiently strong that the member shouldn't take part. I am chairman of the parish council, and the parish council subjected, and I was at that meeting. So on that basis, I will have to leave for that item, and I would assume all members will have to do so in future if they're members of parish councils in the same circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I just say, I think Councillor Abbott, the declaration he's made is totally consistent with other declarations made by members who sit on parish councils. And many of us have been making those declarations for quite some time. But I'd like to declare an enhanced non-pecuniary interest in item 5F, which relates to the Town Hall Centre, Fairfield Road, as improvements are being made there at the same time as other improvements to the town centre. As Cabinet Member for Economic Development Infrastructure, I've obviously been very supportive of measures in the town centre. Therefore, I think it would be appropriate to leave at that point, and then I'll leave for the rest of the meeting, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Monday.
Just for transparency, I'd like to declare an NPI in item G, which is the application for 5 The Kennels, Earls Colne, in so much as the agent is known to me through dealings or his dealings with the Halstead Town Council and the refurbishment of the offices in times past. I haven't spoken to him directly for many months, so I will remain in the meeting and vote.
Thank you, Councillor Monday. Thank you. That brings us to the end of declarations of interest. I can't see anyone else wishing to declare an interest. So we'll move on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Is it your wish to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 21st of July? I will take silence as they are accepted for being approved. Does anyone wish to comment on these minutes? Silence. So those minutes have been approved. Thank you, members. That brings us on to item 4, public question time. We have no general questions in public question time, so we'll move straight on to item 5, planning applications. Members, we have 2 items in part B, but we cannot en bloc either because one is a BDC item and the other one we do have a speaker on, so we cannot en bloc either of those tonight. So we go straight on to the part A applications. And the first application is applications 190159 9 to 13 Church Street, and the LBC number is 1901591 LBC, same address, and we'll take both together, but I do have a statement on this application. So I go over to Alison. Alison, are you ready to read a statement on this application for me, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alison. I've got one. Mr. Dolden, thank you.
That's right, yes.
Thank you.
A statement by Mr. G. Dolden of G. Dolden and Associates Limited. We as a practice have been involved in the refurbishment project for numbers 9 to 13 Church Street, Coggeshall since 2016. This involves 3 listed buildings which form a small terrace onto Church Street. The buildings were last used as a convenience store with accommodation above and to the rear and a service space. The buildings are fine examples of timber-framed buildings with a rare crinkle-crackle wall in the rear garden. A series of reports have been produced regarding the historic fabric of the buildings, and therefore I do not wish to go through the historic attributes in this communication, save to say that the developers T. Ripon have shown their commitment to preserving and enhancing the historic fabric of the buildings and have worked closely with a number of conservation officers during this process to ensure the integrity of the listed and historic buildings and to ensure their integrity is maintained. From the comments made by the statutory consultees, it appears that the commitment to the repairing and enhancing of the historic fabric is agreed and welcomed. The planning period for this project has had a long history, with an earlier application being rejected, and we have, in consultation with the planning officers, carried out a number of amendments and revisions in order to reach the point of compromise that we are at today. As we understand it, the main issue with this proposed development is that the planning authority, and particularly the parish council, would like to retain the commercial space within the centre of Coggeshall. Whilst understanding this argument, there are some overriding issues that have made this ideal very difficult to achieve. The layouts of the buildings are difficult for modern usage. The units were small and the space is difficult to use for modern retail units. The ground floor plan of number 9 with the structure and chimney breast would be difficult for the flow required in a retail unit other than a hobby type shop, of which there are a number in Coggeshall which appear to regularly open and close. Number 11 was really only the shop front, with the rear area being used as residential accommodation. The ground floor of number 13 had been split, with half of the space being used as a rear access way. The space is very poor space in terms of retail space, and there are added concerns regarding the routing of the modern services through a timber frame building where routes are blocked by large oak timbers and historic structure. It is difficult for modern business to function with these constraints, and it is for that reason that the Co-op relocated from a 1960s building in Coggeshall Centre to a purpose-built building on the eastern edge of the village. Please see the existing plan of existing commercial and residential space. Within the proposed plan, the commercial space has been rationalised in order to provide a more logical and easily serviced space with access to storage or back shop areas, which appears much more attractive to a small or start-up retail business. Please see the proposed plan of commercial and residential space. The parade itself is a secondary parade and exists within a time of unprecedented decline in the retail sector, which has been accelerated by the COVID-19 crisis, driving the growth of digital commerce. These buildings have been marketed for 3 years now and have not attracted suitable tenants. Therefore, we feel that the proposed works would provide a higher quality retail unit, which would have more chance of providing a viable commercial unit. The survival of so many historic buildings has been due to the ability of the community to find new uses for them. Buildings that were designed for a specific purpose will naturally, when that purpose passes, becoming redundant and without a new use, fall into disrepair and decay. This process is seen in most historic buildings and applies to 9 to 13 Church Street, Coggeshall, which will have had many different purposes over the last half-century. The comments from the Parish Council also refer to the front elevation and the comment that there is an uninterrupted row of commercial units, and this row of shops reads as a continuous block. In our opinion, number 13 did not read as a shop, as it just had a ground floor door and a window to the side of that door. In our proposal, the shop fronts are maintained and there is very little change to the front elevation of the building. Please see the existing plan of existing elevations. Please see the proposed elevations. The commercial area in the existing buildings is 119.5 square metres and the proposal is 98 square metres, which is a minor loss of 21.5 square metres, and the proposed space will be newly refurbished and be more usable space. Therefore, in summary, we would request that you support the scheme as put forward, as this scheme will repair and reuse the historic and listed buildings in a way which is sympathetic to the existing historic fabric and will ensure its preservation. The scheme will also maintain and enhance the street scene of Coggeshall. It will provide more viable commercial space with only a minor loss of square meterage, even though we understand that maximising commercial meterage is not the objective. In all, the scheme, in our opinion, provides a sympathetic scheme which respects the historic and listed buildings while providing an improved terrace and enhancing the wider area of central Coggeshall. That's the end of the statement. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you very much. we now come to the presentation, and the presentation is going to be made by Catherine. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so these are the two applications before you, one for planning permission and one for listed building consent concerning the refurbishment and change of use of 9 to 13 Church Street. So what is proposed? If you look at the table here, you can see the changes of use are shown. There are, as existing, 2 units of A1 commercial use and 2 units of residential. With the accommodation located above the shop at 11 to 13 Church Street, which are joined together at present, forming one single unit. The proposal would see the original partition of the buildings reinstated, so you would have then 3 units rather than 2, still retaining 2 units of commercial A1 use and 2 units of residential. So at number 9, that would become a 3-bedroom house. At number 11, that would be split with an A1 unit below and a flat above, which could either be let separately or used in conjunction with the shop below. And at number 13, a separate A1 unit across both the ground and first floor. Sorry, I'll just return. And the works associated with the conversion would include those listed here. So the repair and replacement of windows and shop fronts, the repointing of the crinkle-crankle wall, which is located towards the rear of the property, and the chimneys of the properties, partitioning and renovation of the properties throughout, removal of the cement render to the side elevation of number 9 and replacing that with timber cladding, insertion of a staircase into number 13, and removal of a modern addition to the rear of number 9 as well. So numbers 9 to 13 Church Street are located within the Coggeshall Conservation Area. They are all grade 2 listed, and their crinkle-crankle wall behind is also individually grade 2 listed. You can see from the plan that the properties share a close relationship with number 15 behind, which wraps around the properties and forms a courtyard in the centre. This is a view from Church Street looking north. You can discern the modern shop front existing at number 9, and the state of repair of it is fairly poor. The existing unit in number 11 and number 13, which are sort of effectively operate as one unit at the moment. This is looking the other way down Church Street. So we see number 13, number 11 and number 9. This is a side elevation of number 9. And you'll note that the boarding at present only goes up sort of to the first floor here and doesn't extend up into the gable. And this is the rear elevation of the properties. So you'll see number 7, then you see sort of coming towards the left-hand side, the walkway between number 7 and number 9, then moving to number 9, and that building that you see sort of immediately in front of you, that sort of smaller sort of shed, that would be removed. And you can just make out number 15 in the corner of the photo there, sort of joined onto the outshot of number 9. The crinkle-crankle wall to the rear of the properties is in a poor state of repair and therefore needs repointing, as is evident from these photographs. And these photographs show you the typical condition of the properties with the building work, which I understand had partially commenced under the previous consent. This is a historic image of the shop front, showing the shop front number 9, which is intended to be reinstated in this format as part of the works proposed, with its 9-pane window and the door to the side. Looking at the existing ground floor plans, you can see the commercial area at present marked in the red hatching and the residential area in blue. So you can see that you've got a mixture here of both residential and commercial uses, with most of the residential uses occurring at the conjoined units of number 11 and 13. As proposed, there would be a residential use at the ground floor of number 9 and commercial uses on the ground floor at 11 and 13. So in general, the uses would be better organised along the original floor plan. I understand that whilst there would be a 25 metres squared loss at ground floor, overall there would be only be a 5% reduction in the commercial floor space. And one of the main reasons for this, if I just flick back to your other slide there, is the removal of the outshot or small shed, the store at the back of number 9 there, seen right in the very top of the slide. Currently, all the upper floors are residential, with 11 and 13 being linked together to form one unit. So the proposal would see number 9 and number 11 remain residential, with a new commercial use and staircase in number 13. This unit now being separated from number 11. Outside the shop front to number 9 would be replaced to its historic format, and the shop fronts and windows to this elevation and all the other elevations repaired and, where not possible, replaced. So looking at the side and rear elevations here, you can see in the side elevation as proposed, the boarding would be taken right up to cover the whole of the side elevation, and the cement render removed from the side of the property. The small outshot or shed number 9 would also be removed. This site plan shows how the gardens are currently provided and how they would be organised in terms of the proposed site plan. So number 9 would use this space behind marked in red. Then you can see the crinkle crankle wall. Numbers 11 and 13 would gain access through the courtyard under a walkway into the area marked in green. So in terms of policy considerations, there is no net loss of commercial units proposed. So the proposal is deemed to comply with those policies listed, key policy RLP 151, but also the Coggeshall Neighbourhood Plan Policy P6 and local plan policy, emerging local plan policy LPP 65. And the design, as you can see, for the reasons outlined in the report, is considered to be acceptable and would preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and the special architectural and historic character of the listed building, and therefore conforms with the suite of policies which cover both heritage and design as listed in the report. The parish has objected to the application, and they are concerned that the property has not been marketed properly, and they object on the basis that the ground floor of number 9 is being converted into residential use. I think critically, one of the considerations in this case is that the property there's not a requirement for marketing under the policies because there is no net loss of commercial units in this particular proposal. One letter of objection has been received, also concerned that the building's falling into disrepair and that the residential use should not be permitted at the ground floor. Just to recap on the planning history, in 2017, 2 applications were received which were refused by Braintree District Council and went to appeal. These involved a loss of retail units. The appeal was dismissed, and the inspector considered in that case that there was insufficient information to determine that the marketing had been undertaken in compliance with RLP 151. But as noted, officers are of the view that as no units are being lost from this particular proposal, it does comply with the requirements of RLP 151. And the listed building consent in 2017 was, however, granted by the Inspectorate. So in summary, just in the case of the planning application, there would be a small loss of commercial floor space, but officers consider that this would be balanced by the benefits of a more viable configuration for the properties. And in the case of the listed building consent, the impacts are regarded to be acceptable, causing no harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area. And whilst there would be limited harm to the listed buildings, this is regarded to be well offset by the works to preserve or reinstate the original features, such as the original layout, the materials, and the shopfront at number 9. So the application is therefore recommended for approval with the controlling conditions as set out in your report.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think what we have here is a pretty pragmatic and sensible way forward for this site. It is slightly regrettable that there is a slight net loss of commercial space, but in terms of what could have been put forward for this site, I think this is a pretty workable compromise that is comparable and favourable with our own policy guidelines, but perhaps more importantly, favourable with the character of the area. So therefore, I'm very happy at this stage to move officer recommendation to grant for approval and to grant this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Is that for both the...
Pardon me, Madam Chair, for both, yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second for both of these applications. I agree with the previous speaker. I mean, I can understand the concern of the parish council. This is a very sensitive site in a conservation area, but I do think that every effort has been made here to provide a sympathetic reconfiguration. Yes, slight loss, 7% I made it of commercial area, but we're returning to the historic separation into 3 units, which is a plus, and I can't see any harm to the conservation area in the change of use and the materials. So, yeah, I'm very happy to give it my support, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Mrs. Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I support the comments of my colleagues who've just spoken. I think the agent had some good points to make in his statement. This is, you know, they are historic buildings, they're listed, but all of them are in a pretty poor state of repair. And I think sympathetically done, which is obviously the intention here, it will only improve the appearance of them on the street. I think it's advantageous. And he also had a fair point to make about retaining all of it as retail as it is at the moment. Retail has changed and the size and configuration is in the main probably not suitable to retail now. So all in all, I think it's a favourable and sympathetic application and I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Spray. Does anyone else wish to add anything before I put this to the vote? No one has indicated they wish to speak. I'm going to take the vote for both at the same time, for both the listed building and the full application. And I'll start with Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott?
For both applications.
Thank you. Councillor Bowers?
For both applications.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham?
For both, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Horner?
For both
Thank you.
of them.
Councillor Johnson.
4 for both.
Councillor Mann.
4 for both.
Councillor Monday.
4 for both.
Thank you, Councillor. I did hear you. Councillor Rishi.
4 for both.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Spray.
4 for both.
Thank you. That's everyone. That is unanimous. Thank you, members. Thank you very much. Both those applications have been approved. Before I move on, I'll just wait to see if Councillor Unsworth would like to join us before we go to the next application.
Chairman, I have sent a message to Councillor Unsworth to join the meeting. So we just, if I may, just check that he is joining the meeting. I can see we have got Councillor Unsworth now with us. Thank you, Chairman. If I may, can I just test the connectivity to Councillor Unsworth, please? Councillor Unsworth, if you can hear me, please can you just test your microphone for me, please?
Hello, Emma. I've got on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much, Councillor Unsworth. Chairman, if you'd like to take the next item on your agenda, all your members are present. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. The next application is application 19/01957 full, the Notley's Golf Club, Witham Road, Black Notley. We do not have any statements on this application, so go straight to the presentation, which is going to be made by Neil. Thank you, Neil.
Good afternoon, good evening even, members. So this is an application which is for the erection of a single-storey building which will be used as a golf driving range shelter, which will be situated on a concrete slab, and there's also proposed the erection of 2 lengths of netting to either side of the range, and this is at the Notley's Golf Club, Witham Road in Black Notley. So the first slide shows the location plan. So it's not a particularly clear one, so I'll try and make it a little bit clearer as we go along. But you can see the golf course there with the Witham Road on the left-hand side, the blue line denoting the sort of whole golf course, and then at the northern end is the golf driving range area and where the structure is going to go. So just in terms of context, this is just our map. So you can see this is the golf course area here. This is Ty Green, just on the other side of the valley coming up. The railway line going through the middle of the plan, and Black Notley over here. And the golf driving range is just in this area at the northern end of the golf course. So we've got an aerial view here. So this is an area which has been historically used as a golf driving range as part of the golf club here. So you can see it's situated quite close to the clubhouse, the main car park, and you can just see the golf driving range area sort of here. And this is where the slab, and this is where the building is proposed to be situated, just at this end towards the Witham Road. So you can see in terms of where the built form is, it's all sort of clustered in this sort of corner of the site here, which we think is sort of appropriate rather than having buildings dotted around the place. So this is the slightly more detailed site plan. So again, you can see this is where the shelter is going here, and users of the shelter will be shooting down the slope, going down towards the River Brain in this area here. So, and again, you can just see that relationship with the car park and then the buildings there. So the building itself is a fairly simple structure. It will be clad in weatherboarding. It's going to have a green painted or green coloured metal roof. Fairly simple, closed on 3 sides and open to the front. So you can just see there a sort of mono pitch roof with entrance doors at either end. And then that's just sort of showing the floor plan. So you can see within the building there would be 5 bays. So you've got a concrete pad, and then you've got a sort of an AstroTurf mat within it, which the users would use to position their ball and take their shots out. So you can see there in terms of size, it's just over 20 metres wide and almost 6.5 metres in depth, 5 metres in height at the tallest point in the building. So that was the building or the structure itself. As I said, there are 2 lengths of netting proposed immediately to either side of it. So the netting is its highest 10 metres, and it's proposed that there'll be a run of 15 metres to either side. So I think it's to stop sort of errant balls flying off at an angle. So there is an adjoining field, and I think there is a representation which has been made by a landowner who has complained about a number of balls finding their way into the field, which he uses to graze horses or keep her horses. So this fence may hopefully help address some of those, heading her direction. And then to the other side, to the right hand side of the building, you have got the golf course itself. So you've got the 18th hole and a sort of short play area. So there are people playing there. So I guess from a safety perspective, it does enclose that. And if somebody does shank one, I think would be the term, although I'm no golfer, and flies off at an angle, then the netting would sort of capture that or keep it within the range area itself. So some photos just to show you. So this is a photo taken walking down from the main car park. So you can see directly in front of us there, you can see the concrete pad, and you can actually see the dividers and the AstroTurf sort of matting that's been put down already. So it's already been in use. You note sort of an informal overflow car park perhaps sort of behind it. You've got a gappy hedge immediately beyond to the field boundary. Certainly quite a big gap you can see there in the middle. It's a little bit more solid as you look down the range, as you can see there. So you can see it does sort of sit on a little bit of a raised area. Obviously, with the river valley, the course does sit on one slope of the valley, sloping down towards the river at the bottom. So we are at sort of the higher end of the course here. That's just a photo taken looking down the range itself. And that's just looking back over to the right from the range or the pad area. So you can see that short course play area and the 18th hole just around there. So that's one of the reasons that the netting will be put up on that side, just to protect against balls flying off in the direction of people playing over in that area. And again, that's just looking further down the range, just at the vegetation which is on the boundary there. So by way of summary of the issues with the application, the principle of a driving range at the golf club is well established, and the council have approved applications for a range, a structure here in 2001 and 2007. The building that's proposed here is very much in keeping with the buildings which have previously been approved. In terms of policy, we think the relevant policies are policy RLP 40 of the local plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. Both of these are generally supportive of minor commercial development within the countryside where there's no particular harms identified, and we consider that would be the case here. The proposal would improve an existing facility at the club, so the golf driving range has been there and has been in use for a number of years. What the club is looking to do is to put a cover over it, so it might be more appealing to be used during inclement weather, as it would provide some shelter for users, but it's not creating a new facility, and it wouldn't necessarily result in a considerable or a significant intensification of use. It will simply be an improvement on an existing facility, and the council, as I said, have previously considered the use to be acceptable. Members will have seen objections from a number of local residents and the parish council. A number of these refer to floodlighting and the concern about that, and but I think it's important to note that there is no floodlighting proposed, and indeed no external lighting proposed as part of the application. So certainly there have been applications in the past to the council to floodlight the range. I think 2009 being an application where the council refused that. So just to reiterate, so no floodlighting or external lighting proposed as part of this application. And we do indeed propose to cover that by condition, so there's no doubt. Some concerns have been expressed with regards to ecology and concerns specifically about the nets and whether that would be harmful for wildlife. The council's ecologist has been consulted on the application, and as you will have seen, they've raised no objection Indeed, their concern was around the potential for lighting, and also with regards to hedgehogs getting caught in nets rather than birds or bats. And we have got a condition which seeks to address the hedgehog issue, which the ecologist has flagged up. So no ecology objection from officers. As I said, design and appearance of the proposal would be in keeping with the character and appearance, and would be similar to that previously approved on the site. And we don't think there's any unacceptable impacts to neighbours. As I said, this is an existing facility. The golf club and the driving range are both well-established facilities, so we don't consider any significant change arising from this. I think with the benefit of hindsight, having written the report, I think perhaps the conditions could be perhaps a little bit clearer with regards to lighting. So if members are minded to approve, we would recommend modified conditions. Condition 5 sort of is mixed at the moment in that it says no flood lighting, and then it talks about some external lighting as well. I think for clarity, we'll say condition 5 should say no floodlights shall be installed, so that's clear. I have put condition 6, but that should actually be condition 7. I do apologise, this will be a new condition which says details of any proposed internal lighting to the golf driving range building shall be submitted and approved by the council prior to installation. Like I said, no external lighting is proposed, and I don't think officers would be particularly supportive if it were, but it's not proposed. However, the applicant has indicated that there would be lights inside, just for when users are using it, perhaps in murky weather. So we think, just to make sure that there's nothing untoward or particularly harmful in terms of light spilling out, and that it's an appropriate level, we think we can cover that by condition. And again, just to make it clear that there's no other internal or external illumination to be added to the building or on the site at a later date. So in conclusion, this is an application that has been recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as outlined in the report and the amended or revised and additional condition that's been highlighted in the officer presentation tonight. I hope that's of help to members, but if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The officer sort of preempted what I was going to say there, because I didn't think the conditions were tight enough. I don't have any objection in principle to the building itself, but if you look at the design, the only information I could find on the file was it says bulkhead low energy lighting under bays, but those bays face outwards, they're angled outwards, which means any lighting on the roof inside would shine out. So I think it's very important, as the officer has outlined, that additional condition is added. I think the only thing I'd say in addition to that is we need to make sure when it comes in, when those details are submitted, that they're looked at very carefully and that this isn't used as a sort of halfway house to light the actual range itself. And the reason I say that is this is an extremely sensitive location. And as the officer rightly said, previous applications have been refused for actual floodlighting of the driving range itself. It faces directly onto the valley of the River Brain, and I know from colleagues that there are a number of who do surveys there that there are on an amateur basis. There are a number of sensitive species, including glowworms there, which are quite rare now and extremely sensitive to external lighting. So I think not only is that condition important, but what the council does when those details come in is important. As regards to netting, I note the point that the ecology officers don't feel there's been an impact, but I must admit in that location I am concerned about it. I mean, I don't have any information myself one way or the other whether there'd be impacts, but that it is a very sensitive location there with some very valuable wildlife. So I think on this one I'm going to abstain, because although I don't have an in principle objection to the building itself, and I'm happy with what the officers are saying about the lighting, I do have remaining concerns about that netting given its height. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. I did note that the length of the netting is less than I might have thought it would have been, and it is there for safety reasons alone. I don't think there'll be any visual impact of this application on the scene as a whole, which is to its credit. I noticed there is no, I mean, a lot of reps were from sort of neighbours fearing that noise and disruption might sort of hinder their amenity, but I don't see any intention to increase capacity here. It's only a slightly more sophisticated version of what is already there. So I don't see an increase in noise or disturbance. I hope that will be so. Take what Councillor Abbott says about lighting, support both the new wording of condition 5 and the addition of condition 7. Happy to move officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Does it find a seconder before I move on?
I'll second, Chairman. It's Councillor Mrs Spray.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Spray. Councillor Unsworth.
Good evening, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick ones. It's very open there and dark, and although we've said no lighting, has there been any talk about putting low-level access lighting to allow people to get to and find the driving range on a winter's evening or a dark night? And has there been any provision made for any mobility impaired people? Because there are quite a lot of mobility impaired golfers that use these facilities. If I could just ask officers.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
There's no proposals to put any lighting through from the car park. I think from memory, when I visited, there's one light on the car park, but it's not a particularly well lit car park. I would imagine the number of people that would be using the driving range in the darkness would be limited because the range itself won't be lit. I would imagine that if it's so dark you needed lighting to find your way safely there, you probably wouldn't get much benefit from hitting the ball down the range because it would disappear into the darkness. In terms of access to the building, I'm not sure whether the design incorporates any particular measures. All I would say is that it's obviously open completely on one side, so you wouldn't have to use the doorways to either side to enter into it, and the bays are relatively wide. So whilst I couldn't say with any certainty, because I haven't measured it, that you could get a wheelchair into one of the bays, I certainly, sort of looking at the plan and having stood on the pad, I would have thought it would be possible, but I couldn't say definitively. I'm sorry, that's best I can say on that, Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to ask anything or make any comment? Well, members, it has been moved and seconded that we grant this application. It was moved by Councillor Mann, seconded by Councillor Mrs Spray, with the modification of condition 5 and the new condition 6. I'm going to put that to the vote. Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Abstain.
Councillor Bowers.
4.
Councillor Cunningham.
4.
Councillor Horner.
4.
Councillor Johnson.
4.
Councillor Mann.
4.
Councillor Monday.
4.
Councillor Ritchie.
4.
Councillor Mrs Spray.
4.
Councillor Unsworth.
4.
Thank you, members. That application has been granted with one abstention. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. That now brings us on to the application 20000456 variation, land south of Headingham Road, Bulmer, and I do have a statement on this application. So I go to Alison and ask Alison if she would be very kind to read the statement for us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a statement by Mr. H. Doble of Ecorus Rural Property Services, who are the agent. It is noted the recommendation is for approval. The Planning Committee approved the building on the site under application 19011516 FUL. The proposal now seeks to move the building 5 metres further north. This will move the building onto slightly lower ground, height being one of the concerns under 19011516 FUL. The building is only proposed to move forward 5 metres, therefore it is essentially on the same footprint as 19011516 FUL. Parish Council comments are noted and understood to be the reason for this application being determined at committee. It is recognised that the Parish Council in essence support the proposal as it is moving it to lower ground. However, their issue seems to be moving it closer to properties. 5 metres is considered negligible when a building is permitted on basically the same footprint already. Given the building permitted under 19011516 FUL, the current proposal does not make the building more prominent. Equally, it is an agricultural building in a rural area, i.e. where you would expect to find such buildings. It therefore cannot be considered dominant. The building is proposed to move forward to ensure it is on lower ground, one of the concerns raised previously. It is a minor change. This proposal does not alter the need for the building or the fact that a building is already permitted. Moving the building forward only 5 metres is negligible in terms of impacts, and given the building is identical to that permitted under 19011516 FUL, there is no increased impact on the surroundings, only a benefit by ensuring it is on lower ground. That's the end of the statement. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Alison. Thank you. When I come to the presentation is going to be made by Catherine.
There we go, members. Just load that up for you. So this is an application for the variation of condition 2. So it's a variation to the plans which were agreed under permission 1901-516 at land south of Headingham Road, Bulmer, Essex. Now, members may remember this site from back in February. The site is located in an area of countryside just outside Bulmer. It's an agricultural field which sits south of the Headingham Road and east of the track access to Butler's Hall. There are a number of residential properties located on the opposite side of the road, and the land slopes gently upwards to the south. Here you can see the difference as proposed between the two applications. The original full application is here. You can see there's an approximate distance of 40 metres between the building and the Headingham Road, and the change is proposed here under the variation, where the building would be 5 metres closer to that road. Just before I forget, members, just going to your agenda, just to correct an error, the applicant is listed in the papers as Mr. E. Riddle, but is in fact Mr. E. Whittle, so that R should read as an H. So the plans and elevations of the building would remain the same. They would not be changed. As you can see, the size of the building is approximately 9 metres wide by 12 metres long and 4.3 metres high. The building, this is a view of the site. So this land here is not within the ownership of, in the foreground, is not within the ownership of the applicant, I understand. However, just beyond the fence that you can see, that is within the ownership. The buildings on the site are understood to be removed when the construction of the agricultural building commences, so they would not be retained. You can just make out in the distance there the trees which border the access to Butlers Hall Farm and the hedgerow. This is an internal access road to the site. You can see the Headingham Road on the right-hand side lying beyond that hedgerow. The building would be located sort of approximately here, just almost out of shot on your left-hand side. This is a view just looking the other way out the access, so that's towards land that's not in the ownership of the applicant, but you can see that there are already some agricultural buildings on that land of a similar sort of scale, but possibly not the same height. And this is a view looking west along the Headingham Road. You can see the access to the site. The hedgerow itself and the building would be located sort of behind this group of trees here. And this is a view from the access lane or road to Butlers Hall Farm. And on the left-hand side, you can see the hedgerow which borders that. The site is beyond that, and the building would be located in that field. The Parish Council have objected to the building's resiting. They note that they are concerned the building will not be dug into the ground where the land slopes to the south, and therefore I think their concern is that the floor level would be raised effectively at the northern aspect of the building, causing it to appear higher than is proposed or shown on the plans. But I can assure you that both the original permission and a recent variation to that permission ensures that this is not the case. And if permission for this variation is granted, there would be a condition imposed which requires the building to be dug in as the ground rises to the south. As the parish point out, moving the building north by 5 metres will mean it is on lower ground overall than before, and therefore of a reduced relative height than previously. But conversely, it would obviously be closer to the road and to the neighbours that lie beyond that. The parish have concerns that the hedgerow screening at present would not be sufficient to prevent the building becoming visually dominant and harming the rural character of the area. Just to recap on the planning history, you can see from the history that there have been an application for a larger building on the site, and that was refused. The inspector at the time did raise the issue of visual impact of that particular building, and it has always been a consideration on this site. The original permission, which is proposed to be varied, did consider the scale of the building to be, as it is proposed, towards the upper limit of what would be acceptable, which is why a condition was imposed, as you can see is set out here, that notwithstanding the submitted details, the finished floor level of the building should match the lowest existing ground level beneath the building, and therefore making it clear that the building should not be dug into the ground where it rises to the site's southern, that it should be dug into the ground where it rises to the south. We have received an application for a new access, but that's a completely separate matter and is still pending consideration. So the policies which are relevant to you are those which protect and enhance the landscape character of the countryside, and those which require high standards of design. As set out in your report, for the reasons given, it is considered that there is compliance with these policies. And to summarise, the building would be dug in as the ground rises to the south. Officers have not considered, sort of over the course of their consideration of these two, of the original application and this application, that the existing hedgerow is a particularly vital aspect of the visual mitigation, as the building would always have been set back some considerable distance from it, 40 metres as originally proposed and now 35 metres from the roadside. And furthermore, whilst the building would be 5 metres closer to the road, it would be lower in relative height than originally proposed. So generally, officers feel this is a minor change overall and don't consider it necessary to impose any additional controls. And it's recommended for approval with the conditions as set out in your papers.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to Catherine for the presentation. I don't think there's any real great disparity from the previous planning application that was granted here, and particularly with the condition where the ground will be dug in as it sort of rises to the south. I think that mitigates some concerns. So I'm happy to move granting this planning application.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Does it find a seconder before I move on, please? Councillor Mann. Thank you. Would you wish to speak? You're muted, Councillor. Councillor Mann, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Chair.
That's all right.
Only really to say that this is a minor change. Okay, it's 5 metres nearer to the road, but may well end in a lower height of the building, which I recall that representations were made at application time, first time round. So happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone else wish to add anything further to this? No. Well, I'm going to now put that to the vote. The vote. Oh gosh, sorry, I've just lost my piece of paper. Found it now. All those in favour of this granting this application, please. Councillor Abbott?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bowers?
For.
Councillor Cunningham?
For.
Councillor Horner?
For.
Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Mann?
For.
Councillor Monday?
For.
Councillor Ritchie?
For.
Councillor Mrs Spray?
For.
Councillor Unsworth?
For.
Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Thank you. That application has been granted. Thank you. That now moves us on to application 20000539 full. This is Bellway Homes Limited, temporary change of use of land for a period of 2 years. It's South East Rickstones Farm, Rickstones Road, Rivenhall, Essex. And I do have 2 statements on this application. I'm going to ask Alison to read.
Madam Chairman, Councillor Abbott here. I'll leave now as previously discussed.
Oh yes, thank you, Councillor Abbott. We'll just wait for you to go.
Chairman, can I just ask that Councillor Abbott is happy to retire for the remainder of this evening?
Do you wish to come back, Councillor?
No, that's okay. I'll leave now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Alison, could you read the statements for me? The first one is from Miss Linda Wilson, who's an objector.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the statement by Linda Wilson. I live at the barn in Rectory Lane and strongly oppose this application. I make this statement from an emotional standpoint, as this has been my home for 8 years. My property is one of the 2 most badly affected by the Bellway Bluebells site works underway. With only 5 properties in Rectory Lane, we are already overwhelmed by the rollout of this development, and further flagrant disregard of this questionable and additional associated application means we now also have to contemplate the destruction of a beautiful field for a 2-year period to facilitate parking as an oversight and afterthought excluded from the original development application to accommodate its site workers. Aside from the 19 objections already lodged against this application, covering the logical aspects such as poor choice of location, exploitation and negative depletion of the green wedge, other available site options for parking solutions that should be considered first, there is importantly also the heartfelt voices that would be muted in ignorance of the further damage to wildlife, including some protected species, irreparable damage and impact on an ancient protected lane and its renowned John Ray walking route if this application is approved. The written objections promote many other possible parking solutions as a preference, without such hideous consequences to wildlife, scenery, social well-being of those that live in or use the area, and notwithstanding perhaps furthermore the hidden agenda that several objectors have mooted that there will never be a return of the field for agriculture. I ask councillors to consider the latter as a real suspicion of many and not without cause. The location plan illustrating the application raises many questions itself, even if this were the only solution for site parking. It shows the locked metal field gate that is already in place, and pedestrians and walkers already use this. Not one objection has been raised against any increase of footfall use of Rectory Lane. So the question is, why can't the site workers use this? Why would the applicant propose to destruct and dismantle an agricultural field with a hogging pathway running the entire length of the field, with a bridge across the ditch close to my property to access the site, when just some 25 metres away is Rectory Lane, running adjacent for all to use? Furthermore, and given the salient aforementioned point, if any green field was temporarily approved for car parking, the question then would be why not the immediate next field down? This field has a completely screened off corner with a very tall hedgerow, again next to the lane, has the same immediate pedestrian access via the existing field gate, and would be visible only by approach from the golf club dirt track. It is only a few feet further than the proposed location and would be completely shrouded. Surely this would be a better option as a very last resort if another site for parking cannot be found. On this basis alone, it is unsurprising that there is popular belief of a cynical plan that the field will never be returned to agriculture. Please refuse this highly contentious application for its bish, bash, bosh, ill thought out, terrible impact potential and possible future intentions. That's the end of the statement. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alison. Now could you read the statement from Mr. Oliver Spence, who is the agent, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank
This
you.
is a statement by Mr. O. Spencer of Andrew Martin Planning Limited. This statement has been prepared by Andrew Martin Planning on behalf of the applicant Bellway Homes. As members may recall, reserved matters consent was approved for 58 homes on the land south of Rickstones Road in July 2019. Since then, the applicant has been busy discharging pre-commencement planning conditions and successfully relocating the hedge that fronts Rickstones Road. However, when attempting to discharge the construction management plan condition, it became apparent that there will be insufficient space to accommodate a contractor car park on site whilst construction is taking place. Furthermore, officers are not supportive of contractors parking in the surrounding roads. Therefore, the applicant has had to look for an alternative off-road arrangement. This has taken the form of a 58-space car park to be located on the agricultural land to the southeast of Rickstones Farm. The car park is to be used by those working on the Rickstones Road development only. It will not be used for receiving deliveries or materials. Permission is sought for a temporary period of 2 years only. There is no external lighting proposed, and vehicular access will be via Forest Road, the Rivenall Park Phase 1 development, and the Golf Course Access Road. The existing gate at the western end of the Golf Course Access Road will be locked to ensure that contractors' vehicles cannot access the car park from Rectory Lane. Once contractors have parked in the car park, they will be able to walk to the land south of Rickstones Road via a temporary hogging footpath and a pedestrian bridge that spans an existing ditch. When the 2-year period is over, The car park, path and bridge will be removed and the land returned to its current agricultural use. A new oak tree will also be planted in the verge alongside Rectory Lane to provide a tangible benefit when the land is restored. The car park application is supported by appropriate ecological and tree reports, and a condition will link the proposal to the construction management plan for the associated residential development. The construction management plan confirms that there will be no vehicular access to the car park from Rectory Lane, a kneel rail installed along the north side of the access road to ensure there is no vehicular transgression onto the golf course, 5 mph signage along the access road, and convexed mirrors on the corner of the access road to allow visibility of oncoming traffic. In summary, the temporary car park is necessary to enable the delivery of 58 homes, including 17 affordable homes, to the south of Rickstones Road, and the proposals have been carefully planned to ensure that there are no significant impacts on local residents and Rectory Lane. Finally, the Council's planning officers have seen fit to recommend the scheme for approval. With that in mind, Andrew Martin Planning respectively requests that members follow this advice and grant consent. That's the end of the statement. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you. That brings us to end of statements on that application. I'll now go to Neil for the presentation. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we heard previously, this is an application for a temporary change of use of land for a period of 2 years to allow existing agricultural land to be used as a temporary car park with vehicular access taken from Forest Road, and also the installation of a pedestrian bridge and path leading to Rectory Lane. All of this is to be used by contractors working on the land south of Rickstone Road development, which the council has previously granted permission for and is currently being built out by Beltway. So this is the red line plan, so a little bit unusual in terms of shape. So just to explain, the access, the only vehicular access into this car park will be from down here, the southern end of the red line area. So this is an access off Forest Road. So this actually road comes in through the Forest Road development. So this is the one that would have been granted permission, the 2015 application, which was the north east Witham growth location in the parish of Rivenhall. So this is the phase 1, which is being built out, has been built out by Beltway. So the construction workers' traffic would come in through here, continue around, and then head up towards the golf club. So this is an existing sort of track road leading up here. So this is the Rivenhall Oaks clubhouse here. So there's an existing track which continues along past the clubhouse, coming down the side of the golf course here, and then you would turn. So this is a sort of very tight blind corner because there's a hedge here, as you see in the photos later. But then you come round the corner into the field again, continuing along an existing track down here. And then this is where the temporary car park will be constructed here. And then you can see coming off the temporary car park, you can see the route of a hogging path coming along up towards the barn and the properties on Rickstones Road there. And then there'll be the footbridge just here, which will allow workers to walk onto Rectory Lane. And then the development site is just on the other side of Rectory Lane here. So I think the important things to just flag, while we've got the location plan up here, there is a gate here. So there is currently a vehicular access potentially off Rectory Lane here. I think as I understand it, and having been out to site and actually seen it, it's used by staff who keep the greens and so on the golf course. They've got a maintenance compound further along the lane, and they use that to access the golf course. So there is a gate there at the moment, which is locked, I think, some of the time, but also open sometimes. And there's no public right of way along there, although I think there is probably a permissive route, and certainly I've seen walkers walking along there. The areas to either side, as you'll see in the photos of the existing track at the moment, have a wheat crop on them. But like I say, this track, so the track all the way around past the golf course and back down to the development that's being built out at the moment is already in place already. So actually in terms of new development, new work, it's really restricted to this area here, where we'll have a car park constructed, which will be approximately 32.5 metres by 52 metres, and then the hogging path and the footbridge leading up there. So just to emphasise the point, this is an aerial photograph from 2018, so you can just see here the existing road coming into the development here, the track leading up towards the golf club, and you can see it's all there already, quite well screened up along here. And then this is where you turn into the field here, and this is the location of the car park here. So some photos for you for anybody who might not be familiar. So this is looking towards Rectory Lane. So this is one of the photos of the existing track here. This is just flipping back to the other end. So this is you can see the construction compound, or one of the compounds for the Forest Road development, which Bellway are building out. But you can see the existing road here. This is going up towards the golf club. This is when you're passing the golf club. So this is the car park here on the right hand side. This is the track that the construction workers would follow going up. This is the golf course on the side here. This is the track as it runs past the golf club, so quite well enclosed, you can see, with vegetation. Again, another photo of the track passing the golf club. And then this is when we're actually in the field. So this is standing on the track looking towards the barn, so you can just make out the lady's statement who was read out at question time. So that's the barn just beyond there. So the car park would go in the foreground here, and the hogging path would run through the field and just come through at the top up there. So this is the existing access into the field. So this is the area just over here, set back from the hedge, where the car park would go. And just make out one of the gates, which is open there on the right hand side. But as you heard, this will be gated and locked, so that contractors won't be able to access the car park from Rectory Lane, which would be inappropriate. And there's no suggestion from Bellway that they would be doing that or allow their staff to do that. So the footbridge is going to go on the left-hand side. So you can see this is looking back down Rectory Lane. I think it's taken just in front of the barn on the left-hand side. So you can see there is a bit of a ditch there. So footbridge is proposed to allow workers to access over. And this is the location, so showing where the vegetation will be cleared. So there is a limited removal, so a bit of scrub and an elm sapling. That's all that we removed to allow the footbridge to be put in. It is a temporary ditch, a temporary bridge, I should say, over the ditch. So at the end of the 2 years, the bridge would be removed, and there is a condition which would require the planting of an oak tree in the gap that's been left by the removal of the bridge, to sort of recompense for the loss of the scrub and the sapling initially to put the bridge in. And that's just another photo showing the area where the bridge would come through onto Rectory Lane. So along Rectory Lane, there are areas, as you've seen, where it's quite well vegetated and quite well screened. Equally, there are some areas where the hedge is more gappy and you will get views through. So here's one that we've taken which does show a view of the area where the car park would go. So we would certainly acknowledge that the car park would be visible from the lane, albeit it will be set back from the lane, and it certainly wouldn't be visible continually as you walk along the lane. So this is a site plan just showing in a bit more detail how it would be set out. So you can see the track leading in, and then this will be a tarmac type product that will be laid to create the 58 spaces. And then as you can see, the hogging path leading up and the footbridge just up there. So there's some images showing the footbridge. So you can just see a temporary structure, steel painted in green, with handrails to the side for safety reasons. It is important to note again with this application that there's no lighting proposed, so no lighting of the car park or the footbridge or the walkway. The case officer who dealt with the application has checked this with Bellway, and they have confirmed there's no intention to light the path at all. So no lighting issues for us to worry about here. So in terms of summary, as we've set out in the report, this is a site which is located within the countryside. It is a departure application. It's not the type of countryside use which our policies would usually envisage or be supportive of. It is a temporary permission, so it's only for a 2-year period to support the build out of the development of Rickstones Road. And as we've said, the car park would only be used to provide parking for construction workers. So this isn't to be used as a compound or for unloading of delivery vehicles or the like. There'll be no vehicle access from Rectory Lane. We've had no objections from any technical consultees, and there is a condition to require the site to be returned to an agricultural use or agricultural condition after a 2-year period, with that oak tree to be planted in location for the temporary footbridge. So officers don't consider there's grounds for refusal. Just to touch on some of the objections, as you'll have seen in your report, there have been 19 objections with quite a long list of objections from members of the public and from the parish council. A number of the objections refer to other sites which they feel would be better for the parking to be provided. Some are close or relatively close to the site, some are further away, and would probably be ruled out and impractical. Certainly, I think there was one which included the school playing field opposite, which perhaps wouldn't be a particularly attractive use for the school. But I think the important thing, as we've set out in the committee report, is that we have to assess the application that is before us. We can't consider whether there might be better alternatives or other alternatives that we might prefer. And as officers, we don't consider there's reasons to refuse this, either in terms of ecology, landscape or heritage, or indeed highways, as we've set out in the report. There have been some concerns about the suitability of the access track leading to it, and the fact that the track is only of a single width, or able to take a single vehicle for most of the length, and involves a blind corner. This has been discussed with Bellway. They have pointed out that workers tend to arrive in the morning and tend to leave in the afternoon or early evening, in accordance with the working hours that are permitted on the site. So you do tend to sort of have a tidal flow of vehicles coming and going. So in the morning, obviously they'll be coming in, and then in the evening they'll be going out. So this isn't a situation where we would consider that there's likely to be conflict with vehicles trying to go in both directions. There will be a site speed limit put in place and signs put up to restrict speed to 5 miles an hour passing through. I think certainly it's a situation where the construction workers would be travelling in full knowledge of where they're going and need to drive with caution. There is a blind corner which is enclosed, or visibility is restricted due to hedge, which isn't going to be removed. The developer has proposed to put in convex mirrors on the corner to provide some additional visibility, although if you're proceeding around the corner at the correct speed, there shouldn't be a safety issue. Given that there's no public access to the track, so this isn't public highway, you're not going to get people driving down there who would be unfamiliar with the arrangement. We think that the track is suitable for the level of traffic and the type of traffic that will be going down there in the morning and predominantly in the afternoon. So as I said, officers do not consider there's reasons for grounds to refuse, and therefore recommend the application for approval subject to the conditions that are set out in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you very much. That was quite detailed. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't think arrangements of this sort are particularly unusual when it comes to bringing forward development on substantial sites. And I was quite pleased to hear from Neil that appropriate measures in terms of signage regarding speed to mitigate any sort of concerns or problems on the temporary roads track are being put in place. So that's encouraging. Obviously, note the concerns of the nearby resident in public question time, and I appreciate those concerns. And I think we would urge Bellway to continue to be sensitive to the concerns of those in the locality, because they are those in the locality are experiencing quite a noticeable change to their local environment. And also, Madam Chairman, I think we'd all want to emphasise that after the 2-year period, the condition that this does return back to agricultural land. So therefore, Madam Chairman, I'm happy on that basis to move officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Before I move on, does that find a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Unsworth.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Also pleased to see the reinstatement of the tree, plus the condition that it must be replaced if it dies within the 5-year period, and they've then got to replace it. The one concern I have, and I think Neil did go some way to answering it, was the track and the tidal flow and the vehicles coming up and down the track. And I'm just wondering whether or not there should be 1 or 2 passing places somewhere down the way there, just in case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Unsworth. Councillor Johnson, I am sorry, when you seconded, I forgot to ask, did you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Neil, did you wish to respond to Councillor Unsworth before I move on?
Yeah, I can do. I think it's something that officers have considered, but having discussed it with Bellway, as we said, we think very much, given the likely movements and flows during the day, we don't think that there's much likelihood of conflict coming about. So we didn't feel that it was necessary in this instance to require those. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Does anyone else wish to add anything further? No, I'm going to now put it to the vote then. Councillor Bowers.
4.
Councillor Cunningham.
4.
Councillor Horner.
4.
Councillor Johnson.
4.
Councillor Mann.
4.
Councillor Monday.
4.
Councillor Ritchie.
4.
Councillor Spray. Mrs. Spray.
4.
Councillor Unsworth.
4.
Thank you, members. That is unanimous. And I forgot to mention that it was moved by Councillor Cunningham and seconded by Councillor Johnson. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the Part A items. We now come to the first one on Part B.
Madam Chairman, forgive me, I'll take my leave now if that's
yes,
okay.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
I'll just wait for you to leave. Councillor Cunningham has left the meeting. Thank you. It brings us to the item Part B, application 20000492 LBC. This is the repair and refurbishment of existing gates to the library. This has come to us because it is a BDC application. I do not have any statements on this application, so we'll go straight to the presentation, which is going to be made by Chris. Thank you, Chris.
Good evening, members. Just bear with me while I share my screen. Oh, no, don't do that. Apologies. No, sorry, members.
Done that.
We've done that one.
Am I in the right meeting?
Apologies, members. I'm going to have to just reclose the slides. For some reason, it's not actually recognising. Bear with me 1 second. Apologies, members. Hopefully that appears.
Yeah.
Yes, we've got that.
Wonderful. There we go. Apologies for that. So the application before you is for listed building consent for the repair and refurbishment of the existing gates to the library, Fairfield Road elevation at the town hall. Members will all be familiar with the locations. We have the application site here edged in red, and the area is directly, so the application site for the refurbishment is directly in front of the library area, and just got a plan of the actual gates themselves and then the pedestrian gate details as well. So that's the extent of the details. The application is for the repair and refurbishment of these. The report sets out the specifics in detail in terms of what is proposed. No objections from a heritage perspective. It's a well-conceived application, and we're comfortable with the proposal that has been submitted. So it's recommended for approval this evening that listed building consent should be granted. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. At the moment, no one's jumping in to mention and talk about it. I think they look fantastic. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is probably the least complicated and controversial application of the evening, for which we're grateful. This is part of Braintree's history. I'm pleased to see this action is proposed. Happy to move officer's recommendation.
You Councillor, does it find a seconder?
Councillor Ritchie, happy to
Thank
second.
you, Councillor Ritchie. And you've indicated you'd like to speak.
Nothing more to add other than what Councillor Mann did. He was just quicker on the keyboard than me. I would have been happy to have moved officer's recommendations. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mrs. Spray.
Same thing, Chairman. Several colleagues
Yes.
off the draw than me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just to say also that Councillor Monday, quick on the keyboard, but fair play to Councillor Ritchie for jumping in there beforehand.
Well, thank you very much. Well, members, that has been moved and seconded by 3 people, but I'll take it as being moved by Councillor Mann and seconded by Councillor Ritchie. I'm now going to put that to the vote. Councillor Bowers. This is for approval. All right. Councillor Cunning. Oh, yes, Councillor Cunning is out. Councillor Horner.
4.
Councillor Johnson.
4.
Councillor Mann.
4.
Councillor Monday.
4.
Councillor Ritchie.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Spray.
4.
Councillor Unsworth.
4.
Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Thank you that application, the LBC application, has been granted. We now come to the final application for this evening. This is application 2. I think, Councillor Mrs. Spray, you are staying, aren't you? Yes.
Yes, Chairman.
Application 2005550HH. I think Councillor Monday was leaving for this one. Am I right?
No, Councillor Scattergood, I just had an NPI to declare.
Oh, sorry. It's been one of those evenings. Sorry, I do apologise. I'll come back to the application. The application is 2000550HH. This is for a 2-storey side and rear extension, 5 The Kennels, Earls Cone. I do have 2 statements on this application, so we'll go back to Alison and ask Alison if she will read the statements. The first statement is from Mr. Evans and Miss Spear. They are supporters.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alison.
Statement by Mr. J. Evans and Ms. A. Spear. To whom it may concern, we have looked over the plans of Mr. and Mrs. Jeffreys for the adjoining dwelling to ours, and we fully support this planning application, as in our existing extension, we find the roof space adds minimal space gain and is impractical for our growing family. We are also looking at ways to create extra space and would be likely looking to replicate this in the future. That's the end of the statement. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alison. And we have a statement from Mr. Jeffries, who is the applicant. Would you read that for me, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Statement by Mr. P. Jeffries. My name is Paul Jeffries and my family and I have lived in Earls Colne for 15 years. We feel very fortunate to live in an arts and crafts home set on the outskirts of the village, which we dearly love. Our house is set in an acre plot at the end of a one-way track. The garden gives our kids all the space they need to explore nature. However, their bedroom sizes and usability are now inadequate. Our house is no longer fit for purpose for my growing family, so we looked at the neighbour's extension as a way to extend our house without unsettling the family. The main problem with the extension next door is the minimum gain of internal space as expressed by my neighbour to me. The rooms next door, due to roof slope, are in the main unusable and not sustainable with a growing family. This will result in the need for more extension works at a later stage. We enlisted the help of Damien Lockley because of his knowledge of the local architecture and respect of the local area. He has a passion for 1930s architecture and the arts and crafts movement, with a large number of his designs taking kudos from this time. We briefed Damien with our design criteria to design something in line with the 1930s ethos, but which would give us and our children practical living space. The plans he created are sympathetic and modest in design to our property, and very importantly, offer a sustainable living space that in no way is overbearing on the existing property. The proposed design adds character to our house with the use of clay hanging tile and maintains the soft red brick with the existing long cat slide roof. The design is of high quality to a high standard, and our small community around the kennels really like what we have come up with, and hence they supported our application. The Parish Council raises no objection, and we continue to be baffled by the comments made by the planner. The design of the extension keeps all the important architectural features, or we would have not approved this design. This is, after all, our family forever home. We do understand the wider picture of homes in the countryside, but the proposed footprint does not overdevelop our plot. One section of the extension is over the existing building area. We understand it is easy for the planner to justify the neighbour's extension and keep the designs the same as each other. However, this type of opinion adds to the degradation of designs all over the county and is not the high standard of design we have come to expect. I would like to thank you for your time to listen to me, and I hope you see this extension design, as we and our community do, as a great design which keeps all the historic importance and is sensitive to the existing building, but will be a long-term sustainable family home. That's the end of the statement. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Alison. That brings us to the end of statements. We'll now come to the presentation. I think this one is also going to be presented by Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll try a little bit better this time to share the bright presentation. Here we go. Okay, there we go. So, as mentioned during public question time, the application here is for a two-storey side and rear extension. It's a householder planning application at number 5, the Kennels in Earls Colne. I'll take you through the plans. Within the presentation, I'll show you the plans that are before you this evening for consideration, but I've also included the plans from the previously refused application, both the originally submitted plans and also the plans were then subject to that refusal, just by way of context. Just in terms of site history as well, there was an application that was granted permission way back in 2004, I don't have those plans incorporated within the presentation, but I do have them to hand if members want to see those as well, which may again provide a useful context because there is some evolution in the design of the proposals in this case. So starting off, we've got the application site. So the application site is accessed off of the kennels, which is off of Housestead Road in Earls Colne. So the application site itself is beyond development limits. So in terms of policy, RLP 18 applies, which requires extensions to be subordinate to the host dwelling. In terms of the block plan, this is the proposed block plan. So you can see the existing property number 5. The hatched area indicates the area of the proposed extension, and you can see the adjacent property number 4, which has been extended to the side. And then just the existing elevation. So as mentioned by the applicant, the feature of the rear elevation is a long sloping cat slide roof, which in terms of footprint makes the property look slightly bigger, but at first floor level obviously restricts the amount of accommodation that can be provided within the roof slope. And then the front and the side of the property. So completely agree with the applicant. The existing property is very attractive. We've got the floor plan here, which shows the existing ground floor arrangement and the existing first floor. So 3 bedrooms at the moment, along with the bathroom, and then you have the stairwell access as well. So in terms of the proposed, this is what's before you this evening. 2-storey side and rear extension. So in terms of areas of contention, I suppose, in terms of the aspect from the front, I think from an officer's perspective, we're relatively comfortable with the size and the width of the extension to the side. The issue for us moving on to the rear elevation is really the additions that come around to the rear of the property and the bulk and form of this and the subservience of it. So this shows the rear elevation as proposed. So you can see the double gable that comes off of the rear elevation. And then looking at it from a side perspective, so you've got the 2 side elevation drawings. So the one on the left will be looking to the side of number 5. So you can see the gable end of the extension and then the return with the double gables that come off the back. And then the other side, so this would be seen from the neighbour's perspective, so from number 4 from the north. The proposed ground floor plan, so it provides enlarged accommodation at ground floor. And then at first floor level, so it would change from a 3-bed to a 4-bed property with a large master bedroom to within the sort of the side elevation element and a enlarged bedroom 3, if you like. Now, the previous application, which was refused, this was I'll take you through the originally submitted plans, but these were superseded during the course of the application, and these are actually very similar to what is now proposed within the current application. The applications were superseded on the basis of officer advice and concerns that were raised at the time. So again, the view from the front, the view from the back, so very similar, although the application is now proposed resolves some of the issues with the design there. You can see the gables not particularly matching up well with the end of the roof, and it's a little bit more articulated now compared with this original version. And you've got the view from the side. So again, you can see on the side elevation there that the rear projections at the moment are flush with the side, whereas the proposal now is slightly more articulated. And then the refuse scheme. So those plans were superseded. A new set of revised plans were submitted. So again, front elevation, very similar, but it introduced a double pile form at the rear, which on the side elevation view appears like this. So again, the view on the right hand side of this particular slide shows the rear addition being made as to how that was accommodated. And then just a few photographs of the property. So as mentioned by the applicant, yeah, very attractive property, really nice brick, aged very well. It's got some real character. That's the view just from the rear garden looking to the side. You can just see the existing house to the left there, and a slightly better view of the existing house with the tiles and the sloping roof. Again, just a quick view of the side elevation, and then one from the back, so you can see the neighbour's extension to the side that's been extended with dormers to the rear. So in terms of the key considerations in this particular case, officers still feel, notwithstanding what the applicant said during his statement, that while the principal extension to the property here is acceptable, and certainly the original application that was granted way back in 2004 shows that the planning authority, there'll be a willingness there to extend the property. The proposals, both in their current form but also in their previous form, have been considered to be too large and bulky, not subservient to the existing dwelling house, and actually quite poor in terms of their design and not integrating well with the design of the property. So we would disagree with the statement that's been made that the proposals actually integrate well and are in keeping with the existing property, given the size of the additions and the actual detailed design. As I said, there's clearly not an issue here in terms of principle. The issue is really one of detail in terms of the detailed proposals and of the extension and how they relate to the host dwellings. So from an officer's perspective, while there is a scheme here to be approved, we're not convinced that the proposals as they stand are acceptable, and the officer recommendation reflects the original advice that was given on the first application, which was these proposals were unacceptable in terms of their size, scale and design, but also how they integrate with the existing property. Happy to answer any questions. I will move the presentation back onto the proposed rear elevation for the current proposal. If members would like to see the 2004 plans, I can put those up on the screen as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Chris, for the presentation. I called this in at the request of the applicant because he felt that both he and the architect has done as much as they could to make the application acceptable to officers while still trying to achieve the applicant's aims in terms of gaining additional living space. The first application, I think, was submitted last year and was, as Chris has said, was refused. Was actually refused, I think, in March this year on design grounds. And this second application before us this evening, I think, has been the subject of some discussion with officers. And I understand that further amendments were made to the design in order to try and gain approval. I really do think the applicant has tried hard with this. It's honestly not very often that I disagree with officers' recommendation, but I'm afraid I do with this one. I honestly don't think that what is being proposed is unreasonable. In advance of tonight, I looked very carefully at the plans on the website, and to me, it doesn't appear over large either for the existing building or for the site, which is quite substantial. I know the site quite well. It's not all that far from me in the village. It isn't in a conservation area, and neither this or neighbouring properties are listed. I don't believe there's any harm to the landscape in this instance. I hear what the officer and her reporter said about the style of extension to the property next door at number 4, and that this one should reflect that extension. But I personally don't agree that this extension looks out of place, or will do, as it is presented. And I don't think it's unsympathetic in design. The parish council don't object. Neighbours are supportive. One neighbour has taken the trouble to submit a statement tonight. So given all of that, Madam Chairman, I'm going to support this application, and I'd like to move approval, which I realise is contrary to recommendation in the report. Thank you.
So before I move on, does anyone wish to support and second Councillor Mrs. Spray's going for approval?
I will second it. Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you, Councillor Unsworth. And you've indicated you wish to speak. Would you like to speak now?
Yes, I echo Councillor Spray, but what span it for me was the fact that the neighbours don't object. I think that speaks volumes. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Okay. Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Ritchie, sorry, have you missed my calling you? You're muted. Councillor, you're muted.
Apologies, there's a delay with my unmute, but it's now unmuted. Apologies. Yeah, I think I I think what's kind of pushing me towards supporting Councillor Spray is the choice of designer and architect. Out of the myriads out there, they chose one who had a particular skill with working on buildings of this type to ensure that they reflected that in the design materials used and final finish. I think Councillor Spray's right. She doesn't at all very often clash with officer recommendation, but I think on balance, I think there's a slightly clear line to be seen with supporting a move against officers' recommendations here. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, if no one else wishes to speak at this present time, I'm going to put Councillor Mrs. Spray's motion to the vote, and her motion is for approval. I'm going to start with that. This is for approval against the officer's recommendation for refusal. Councillor Bowers?
Against.
You're against. Councillor Cunningham? Oh, he's gone. Councillor Horner?
For.
For. Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Mann?
Against.
Councillor Monday?
For.
Councillor Ritchie?
For.
Councillor Mrs. Spray?
For.
Councillor Unsworth?
For.
Thank you. 1, 2, 6. That's 6, 4, and 2 against. That motion has been approved, so that application has been granted. Councillor Mrs. Spray, I presume we will want conditions added, which will have to be agreed at a later time.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, members, that brings us to the end of our planning meeting for this evening. I'd like to thank everyone for your patience, especially at the beginning when we had the technical fault, and I'd like to thank officers for rectifying it as quickly as possible, especially when they're under such duress. It must be rather frightening, knowing that we might not be able to have our meeting, and I would like to thank everyone for their support this evening, and I'd like to close the meeting at 21:18 and hand over to Emma. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I ask the webcaster to terminate the YouTube broadcast, I would ask members to complete the short survey that has just been sent to you. It is very important for us to improve our meetings to receive your feedback. I'd also like to remind you that the Council will retain performance data relating to your connections to this meeting this evening in case there is a legal challenge as to how we've held this meeting. Thank you very much for bearing us with us this evening, and thank you and good night. Please